The first question I have for you all is that you mentioned that there's actually wisdom in the reactions and in the reactive emotions that we have when we engage in the conversation of anti-racism. I'm curious to hear a little more about that, and I'm wondering if you can expand upon that a little. What is helpful in these gut emotional reactions we have when we're starting to engage in the conversations?
So cognitively, emotions are an important source of meaning making for human beings. So there's a lot of research on the way emotions factor into how we remember, how we understand, how we recall memories, and that most of that happens at the subconscious or preconscious level. And so we think that spending time bringing awareness to our emotional reactions and the way that emotions influence how we think is a vital part of learning and a vital part of practicing anti-racism. And so the framework that we use, we understand emotions at their core as containing wisdom. So the shame that I feel when I learn about race and racism, this is really common for a lot of white people, that shame and guilt serve a valuable function. So when I am learning about the history of slavery and lynching and all of these horrible atrocities, I feel shame because what I'm learning is that I benefit from that history of death and dehumanization. I have benefits as a white male. Shame is the natural feeling that you should feel. That's an appropriate response to that kind of reality. And so when we take the time to understand that shame, I understand that I feel this way because I'm in a system that I don't want to be in, that I didn't mean to be in, but that I'm responsible for. And so that shame is trying to say, change this, do something about this. You know, find a way to address this situation. Don't go back to the way that you've always been, because that's complicit. I'm complicit in racism if I try and close that door once I have that awareness. And so when I take the time to understand what that shame is trying to tell me to do, it becomes a way to reframe these emotions in a way that helps me stay motivated and to sustain my practicing anti-racism.
So being reflective, oh, sorry, Chris.
Oh yeah, and I was going to say the only thing I'll add to that is the I don't say the challenge, but I think the unique part of what we try to emphasize in our process is often what happens is we have these kinds of those emotions and we are either enmeshed in them, right? Where we become the frustration or we become the anger, we become the shame and guilt. And so the kind of step of being grounded to kind of give us some distance between that reactivity and us allows us to actually hold it in compassion, right? Like that's like fundamentally critical to being able to kind of do the sustainable anti-racist work that we believe that one needs to be able to do in order to, I think, do this in a long term and to not burn out. And in this sense, when you're able to separate yourself from that enmeshed emotion, you're able to essentially kind of see that to do what we call taking a U-turn, right? In terms of saying, okay, what does this emotion, what's the kernel of wisdom in this particular kind of reactivity, that we might be able to care for it, right? To actually be able to listen to its unmet need. And the best way we found to be able to kind of explain this is to think about that emotional longing as like to care for, like you would care for a friend, right? So like as we would extend like compassionate care towards someone who we loved, who was hurting, we do that same kind of care towards us, because in this way, that emotional activity is a barometer of like what we need to survive and flourish, right? They're a guide in this way because there's something that is trying to alert us that something is off, something isn't quite right, and it's helping us trying to find that balance of who we feel like we actually are called to be.